Hello, my name's Lesley Atherton, and this is a short story called Rumplestiltskin for the Modern Day. Gordon twitched awake and immediately found himself not only bound and gagged, but in deep confusion about how he'd ended up in that state. As his eyelids dragged themselves painfully open, they adjusted to the low light and the truth began to filter into his consciousness. Within a couple of minutes, his brain had managed to piece together each disparate and seemingly irrelevant memory, and the picture this left him with was almost beyond belief. Images of his tiny daughter, also bound and gagged, were printed onto large posters that also displayed a few scrawled words of black marker pen, startling against the flat white background. "Fess up or she gets it," the posters said. This was not where he expected to find himself when he'd woken for the first time that morning. At 7, his alarm had beeped, and he'd dressed, eager to leave the house. He'd been positive and cheerful, looking forward to his work meetings that afternoon, and to the kids' party to be held later at the indoor play area just down the road. Elise, his daughter, aged only 3, had already been awake for 2 hours, bouncing around happily, excited at the prospect of princess dresses, snack food, sweeties and run-around time with friends. But he'd opened the fridge to rummage for an individual carton of orange juice to take with him in the car. He'd heard a noise, but after that could remember nothing. Gordon Harvey had been living the weekday morning dream. Then he wasn't. He looked again at the "Fess up or she gets it" posters. They'd been constructed from sheets of A4 printer paper scrawled with thick royal blue marker pen in uneducated script. Torn as he usually was between two different and diametrically opposed dialogues, he queried his senses about whether he should shout out and demand rescue, or whether it would be wisest to wait. He decided on the latter, mainly because he didn't have the energy for confrontation, and because the bleeding cut at the back of his head was both seeping and throbbing. He had been removed forcibly from his home and had been brought here. Surely that meant that the kidnapper must have been expecting something from him that wasn't just money. He didn't want to think about what had happened to his little girl. And what did "fess up" mean? The thought hadn't occurred to him till that moment. His senses perked into action and he realised for the first time where he had been imprisoned. He was in Travis's basement. The unused weight training equipment and the overstuffed fading corner sofa gave it away. He'd been down there many a time watching football or rugby, knocking back a few cans and shouting with jubilation at every goal. So, computer-obsessed geek Travis had found out. Gordon should have anticipated such an extreme reaction to his newfound knowledge. After all, a man was really asking for it when he embarked upon an affair with his best friend's wife. Damn it. Woozily, Gordon attempted to rise from his position on the floor, and as he did so, the television sprang into action. He struggled to his usual seat on the sofa and watched as the screen came to life in a psychedelic swirl of garish colour. The voice of a person he'd considered a friend began to speak. "Mr. Gordon Harvey, you've been a bad, bad boy, haven't you? Oh yes, I know all about you and Debbie. She's confessed, I admit under duress. And now it's time for you to fess up to your lovely lady wife, Shelley. She'll be wondering where you and your sweet little daughter have got to. Poor woman. It seems so cruel to simultaneously rid her of the 2 millstones around her neck, but it's not as cruel as having an affair with my wife." Gordon shivered. "There are 2 things you need to do, deceitful neighbour of mine. First, you need to write a letter to your wife, Shelley. You need to tell her exactly what has been going on. No coded sentences, no clues as to your position or welfare. When finished, you need to push it under the door. I'll deliver it to Shelley." "What's the second thing?" asked Gordon. The voice cut in over his, clearly a recording. "You'll no doubt be wondering about the second thing. You'll find out soon enough." The television cut off and the room's lights came on, exposing a pad of lined A4 paper and a blunt but still usable pencil on the coffee table. Gordon leaned across and considered what to write. It was difficult to express all he needed to say in words and without his wife in front of him. Debbie meant nothing. It was all about sex, and there was no love involved, but how could he ever get Shelley to understand? He rubbed his eyes with his palms, then placed the pencil's lead on the page. He began to write. There's no need to go into detail about what his letter related. Suffice it to say it was the same excuse-making, self-pitying rubbish that every other similar letter would include. It wouldn't be enough to stop Shelley being upset, but nothing in this situation would ever be enough. He knew that more than anyone. Letter completed, Gordon made his way to the door at the top of the wooden basement steps. He pushed the paper under and returned to the sofa. He watched the clock. 6 minutes later, a voice came from behind the door. It was the same voice as had appeared on the television earlier, the voice of his former friend and neighbour. Your letter is inadequate, but quite frankly, anything would be. She deserves better. I know, I'm sorry, Travis. Please tell me, how's my little girl, please? It isn't me who needs the apology, is it? No. A silence. So I'm just going to wander round to see Shelley. I'm going to hand her your letter and comfort the poor girl in whatever way I see fit. Gordon winced. No, not that. What about the second thing I have to do? Ah, yes, my nasty neighbour, Gordon. Your next task is to guess my name. I know your name. You're called... No, Travis is a name I've been using for quite some time, but it's not the one I was born with. Give it a thought and I'll be back later. No, wait, why are you doing this to me? When are you going to let me out? What are you going to tell Shelley? Where's Elise? Please. But it was too late. Travis was gone. How the hell was Gordon going to work out the real name of a man he had known for years as Travis Filed? Sighing and aching both physically and with the agony of heartache at the upset his wife would be experiencing, he again picked up the pencil and began to write. He had fallen into a disturbed slumber by the time Travis returned and again stood outside the basement door. "Gordon," he wheedled, "where are you, lovely neighbour?" Gordon woke with a jump. "How is Shelley? Is she all right? And our girl?" "Oh dear," said Travis, "we can't ask questions till we've answered the one I asked. What is my name?" Why do I have to do this? It's like that fairy tale when the girl's imprisoned and forced to work to spin something or other into gold. She was forced to work out the name of Rumplestiltskin. "Oh yes," said Travis, "only on this occasion there's a lot more at risk than a little bit of involuntary imprisonment or forced labour. But as you're so ridiculously stupid, I'll go easy on you. I'll allow you to guess my two names independently. Right, on your marks, get set, go." Gordon stumbled to turn back to the correct page in the notepad. Mentally he extracted all the first names from the list and he reeled off each one. Alex, Sam, David, John, then some slightly more unusual names. Sheldon, Gabriel, Cameron. The silence was deafening. Gordon continued with a few more of the uncommon names. Vincent, Frank, Albert, Grant. A shout from outside the door informed him that the last name he had read out was correct. "So, you know, I'm Grant," he said. Second name, ready, steady, go. This was a lot more difficult, and it wasn't helped by the fact that Gordon was still dopey from his kidnapping. He listed surnames from his family, his friends, his work colleagues, famous singers, famous writers, but still there was a silence outside the door. "I can't think of any others," he said with a massive sigh. "Oh dear," said Travis / Grant. "Shall I give you a diddy little clue?" "All right, dear neighbour, I'll do you a tiny poem. My first is in love, but not in hate. My second's in pear and also in date. My third is in lemon, but not in crime. My fourth is in punishment and also in lime. Have a think about it. I'll be back." Gordon spent almost an hour trying to work out all possible configurations, and there was only one name he could come up with. Vale, Grant Vale. But that was only because he knew the name from somewhere, probably the television. But then it sprung into his consciousness. Oh no, oh very, very definitely no. Grant Vale, Grant Vale. Serial killer, Grant Vale. Revenge killer, Grant Vale. Child killer, Grant Vale. Gone to ground, Grant Vale. And it was at that precise moment that Gordon Harvey realised that pretty much the most inadvisable thing you could ever do was to have a love affair with a serial killer's wife. He lay on the sofa and resigned himself to his fate.